Hello and welcome to One Controller Port Podcast, episode 28. I'm here as your host, Benjamin Yoder, talking to you about video games, probably. There's actually some things I'm kind of interested in this week. It's not super common that I have a ton of news stories I can really look at. I usually can find like two or one. Like one that I feel really good about, then like two that I'm like, okay, yeah. And I guess that's true in this week too, but I've got three things. We will probably cut some of them short. But I'll start with the most exciting, biggest news for me this week, and that is Valkyria Chronicles 4. Very surprising. I did not expect to see this so soon. Just as a reminder, if you're not a fan of the Valkyria Chronicles series, Valkyria Revolution, which is like a spin-off title, just came out earlier this year. Even in Japan, I think it was January this year. And then so it was kind of surprising to see them say, "Oh, here's Valkyria Chronicles 4 now. Welcome." But it's I'm guessing this was the timeline of things because hey, heads up, apparently Valkyria Chronicles 4 is 90% complete. That's crazy considering the other game just came out earlier this year. I will have to find the source for that again. I don't remember exactly where. I think it was a Silicon Era article, but I'll double check. I'll put the source in the description of where I got that from. But yeah, so Valkyria Revolution came out earlier this year. So I'm guessing what happened was after Valkyria Chronicles 3 came out on the PSP, and let's see what year that was. Valkyria Chronicles 3, which I have not played through yet. I want to. So Valkyria Chronicles 3 came out in 2011, and as far as I know, there were no other releases after that until this year with Valkyria Revolution. But I'm guessing at some point Sega had planned to reboot the series because, hey, Valkyria Chronicles is a good series. It's a good series. And that's when they started working on Valkyria Revolution. At the same time, they re-released Valkyria Chronicles 1 on PS4 and PC, and it did I remember at the time them being like, whoa, this did a lot better than we expected it to. I think maybe they just thought it was going to be a quick and easy, like, cash grab thing real quick, but then we're kind of surprised by the amount of sales they ended up getting, or response to it they ended up getting. And then so Valkyria Chronicles, or Valkyria Revolution, was probably already in development as like a reboot. And then so they eventually decided to do Valkyria Chronicles 4 because the first game did well. Here I am making my own story of how this probably happened. But that's my best guess, is that basically Valkyria Revolution was going to happen no matter what. But now Valkyria Chronicles 4 is happening because Valkyria Chronicles 1 did so well on PC and PS4. So I'm excited. My biggest concern, I mean, with every game announcement, I always have a lot of questions. And my biggest concern is Valkyria Chronicles 2, which is probably my favorite Valkyria Chronicles so far, out of the three I've played. Valkyria Chronicles 2 is a game that I feel like was made better by being put on the PSP. I don't know how much they would have changed the Valkyria Chronicles formula if they didn't have to because of the PSP's limitations. And surprisingly, those limitations the PSP put on that game made it better in a lot of ways. It divided up all the areas in the game and then like limited the number of units that you could have placed at times. And it made it surprisingly more strategic in a lot of ways. I mean, you didn't get the large-scale battles like you did in the first game in terms of like, here's one big open area. But I didn't feel like these smaller areas particularly hurt the combat in the game. I think that it was, each of those areas were kind of the perfect size of every class was useful. You know, the tanks, the shock troopers, even snipers and things like that. There wasn't really like a wasted space or anything like that, where I think you could say, it's been a long time to play Valkyria Chronicles 1, but I think you could say there were times where things were so far off in Valkyria Chronicles 1's, it essentially didn't matter what was going on. But yeah, and then just like story-wise, there was, because everything was based around this school and that you would go to missions from the school, you like this kind of central hub, they had a lot more opportunity to let you explore the story with the side characters more, where in the first game there was definitely a main plot that I would say was probably stronger than Valkyria Chronicles 2, but the other characters surrounding that plot didn't really matter. I mean, they had a lot of personality on the battlefield, which was great, but story-wise, they just didn't get a lot of time. It's pretty much like, oh, here's this character. I like their voice acting in the cutscenes, or in the battles. I like their what short quips they have at times, but they never really played a significant role. So I never played Valkyria Chronicles 3 to see how they took 2 and then changed it in any ways to make it more unique, or like to kind of push the series forward. So I really don't have any context for how the Valkyria Chronicles series has evolved outside of that jump from 1 to 2, which evolved from necessity. And Valkyria Revolution is kind of its own weird thing. I probably like Valkyria Revolution more than I should, but nothing about it marks it as like a particularly good game. I might do something on it at some point because I'm so conflicted about how I feel about it. There are some interesting things in there, and I actually kind of like the main plot quite a bit. It takes a while to get going, but there are aspects and like concepts around the main plot that I really like. But it's definitely the weakest of all the games I've played so far. So I need to find at some point a way to play Valkyria Chronicles 3. I was originally like, oh well, I'll beat Valkyria Revolution this weekend, which I was gonna try to do, but as I play it, I'm like, oh, this probably isn't gonna happen just because it's taking a lot longer than I thought to get through this stuff. But as for Valkyria Chronicles 3, I was gonna like, okay, maybe like early 2018. But if Valkyria Chronicles 4 is 90% complete, that's probably gonna be too much Valkyria Chronicles for me between now and 2018. So depending on when 4 actually comes out, I don't know if they've actually put like a window of release. But depending on when Valkyria Chronicles 4 comes out, I may do 4 first, then end up rolling back to 3. But if you like the original Valkyria Chronicles, and you haven't played 2, I highly recommend it. I think on the surface level, it's easy to kind of write it off because it is like, oh, we're a bunch of high school kids in a military academy, very, very kind of like traditional anime slice of life kind of setup. But I think how it handles it is really well. And so I would highly recommend Valkyria Chronicles 2. Be careful about playing it on a TV though, because that game was not meant to be blown up on a TV. PSP or Vita are probably your best shots on playing that. But hey, you could make yourself suffer and see all the weird dithering they do in that game. If you blow up on TV and go like, oh yeah, that's interesting that's how they made that look that way. But also on a 40-inch TV, this is burning my eyes. I also really like Yvonne. I'm a huge fan of Vice from Skies of Arcadia, and Yvonne is basically Vice if he was hot-headed and had a short temper, which is not a bad thing. I like that. It's not a bad thing. Oh, kind of another game that I don't really know. So there's apparently an anime. It's called, or manga called, 7 Deadly Sins. I have no idea what this is. The first time I heard about this series is when I saw the trailer for the game. And then like a few months ago, they put a trailer out, and I thought some of the concepts were kind of interesting, between like, one of the characters apparently being huge, like this big giant person. But I don't think they really showed any gameplay. I think there's a lot of CG or like some very minimal gameplay in that original 7 Deadly Sins trailer. But recently they put out a trailer that looks a lot more, that is mostly gameplay. I mean, there's some CG stuff at the start, but it looks basically like a Gundam Versus game. You can do 1-on-1 or 2v2, and you select these characters, and you're kind of locked on to each other. And you're just like in this arena battling each other. And from what I understand about Gundam Versus, it's a game a lot about timing and like juking. It's very much like a fighting game, as far as I know. I'm not a big fighting game fan. Okay, let me correct that. I like fighting games. I have no idea how to play fighting games beyond like, here's this basic button combination to hit this guy. I don't really know anything about like spacing or like, like playing mind games and things like that, and fighting games. And it seems like Gundam Versus is built around that. So this game has that very much that style of kind of like it's like it's like an arena fighter almost, where you're running around this arena and you have full 3D control, but you're always locked on to an opponent. And if you have two opponents, you can like switch between locking onto each of them. But visually it looks really nice. The environments look really good. I'd say the characters are kind of plain looking, but I mean, I don't really expect too much out of something that was pulled directly from an anime or manga in terms of the character design. I think inevitably what happens is, you have these characters that are pulled directly from an anime or manga, is that they're kind of flat shaded in those mediums that they're in. So when you pull them over to video games, they look kind of plain. Versus like an anime style game, which I think, because you're not working off this source material that is a kind of like very flat in how it looks, you can do a bit more with character models. I'm speaking out of my ass is what I'm doing right now. But yeah, it looked pretty neat. I don't know if I'll play it. It comes out in February here. I'm surprised it's localized, since I've never heard of Seven Deadly Sins. I assume it's popular to some extent. Sometimes with like anime and manga, I don't really know what's popular. There's some mangas reading called like Salmon-kun, something like that. It's like this summoner series, and it's got a really cute look. I really like the character expressions and like reactions in that manga. And I've seen a Japanese fan base from it. I actually found out about it through if you ever read my Scum of the Brave article, there's this this artist who worked on it, or I think actually developed the whole thing, that followed a bunch of people with it. And so I followed them because they had this whole weird thing with pizza and me. You can go read the article. I mentioned at the end of the article what happened. But yeah, it's I just don't know what's really popular. I think Salmon-kun might be popular, but I might not be sure at all, really. I read mostly manga more than anything, and I don't see a lot of people talk about manga very often. Or at least not as often as like anime. But yeah, I forgot if I said it, but I probably will never play Seven Deadly Sins, but I think it looks kind of cool, and if I had the opportunity, I would play it. I think I like Gundam to some extent, and I like the idea of a game like Gundam Versus. I played Gotcha Force on the GameCube back in the day, but it just never really, that gameplay style hasn't really stuck with me. I haven't experienced enough games in that gameplay style to really feel confident, because Gotcha Force is really the only one I've ever played. And I played some very, very brief amount of Gundam Versus at the GameStop Expo. One quick thing I'm going to try to shove in here before I move on to my favorite segment. The Closers is getting localized into America. If you don't know what The Closers is, it's a Korean beat-em-up game. It came out like 3-4 years ago at this point in Korea. I'm not sure if it went to any other markets. It's got a nice style. It reminds me a lot of I don't think Persona is the right word, or the right word. Persona is now a word rather than just the name of a thing. I don't know. It's got like a. The only way I can describe it is it's like a kind of like a futuristic fashion kind of thing. I don't think it's particularly anything unique. Anyways, I'm not getting anywhere with that. But I will say it's like a 2D beat 'em up. I assume it's free to play to some extent, or like subscription based maybe. And it's got a nice style to it. It's got a nice clean look to it. It is kind of old, so it doesn't look like the greatest thing ever. And I think it's free to play, so it's also kind of got a budget to some extent. But yeah, it's just like a 2D beat 'em up, and it looks pretty interesting. You have a lot of characters you can choose from. I think more than anything, it's just the presentation of it. I don't know if it's an online beat 'em up. I know there's some like beat 'em ups where you can play online with other people, even like something like Dragon's Crown or something like that. But yeah, I did a bad job of explaining what The Closers is. I will link something in the description so you can look at it yourself, but I think it's got a nice style to it, and I can't even explain that style, so what a waste of time. I'm glad I put it at the end and was like, I'm just going to blow through this because apparently I couldn't describe it. But what we are going to do now is we're going to open that cookie. open that fortune cookie. I got Flicky on GameCube. That's that bird game. It's in the Sonic Mega Collection. I have nothing to say about Flicky. Also, I got Puyo Puyo Tetris, which shouldn't be in there because I've never played Puyo Puyo Tetris. This fortune cookie segment is going to have some problems at some point when I forget what games I've already talked about and just talk about the same games again. I also need to update my backlog. I haven't been keeping track of it and it's for like 6 months, and I desperately need to fill it back in. But I got a game. Echo Knight for the PlayStation 1. Echo Knight is a From Software game. It's built off the, what's it called? King's Knight? King's Knight From Software. That doesn't seem right. Nope, that's not it. Shoot. From Software. Kingsfield. It's based off the Kingsfield engine, so it's a very slow and pacing, like plotting game. Except for where Kingsfield is an action RPG, Echo Knight is like a point and click adventure. You're this guy on this ghost ship, and you're walking around solving puzzles and stuff. And I think what I like most about it is it has this very kind of like dark and eerie style. It is I think some way supposed to be like kind of a horror game. It's not really. But you're basically on this boat going around, and you're like turning on lights and stuff and turning on generators to kind of keep the ghosts away. But there's also there's a handful of bad ghosts that show up, but there's also most of the ghosts are actually good ghosts. They're just people trying to kind of move on from their existence. So what you do is you go and you solve these ghost problems, and then you get to kind of see a snippet of their life and how they ended up in a point of being in regret. And then so how you solve their stuff lets them kind of like rest in peace. The voice acting is pretty I would say it's bad, but I think what's most interesting about it is it's everyone's kind of got this like groaning kind of sound to their voice. They're like, "Oh, my wife Maria left me. Oh, Maria," or something like that. Everyone just sounds miserable. But I really like it. Also, it has probably one of the most like interesting. Man, I don't know how to talk about this without just giving it away. Shoot. What should I say? So there's this part in the game. I'm just gonna give it away. It's an old game, but like, oh man, I hope you never play it. If you do, I would like to say maybe just skip the rest of this podcast, because after this I'm just gonna plug shit. So there's this part in this game where you fall in this tomb, and you find the graveyard keeper down there, and he's like, "Oh, what are you doing down here? You shouldn't be down here. Let me lead you out." And so you follow him, and you're going through this tomb, and then at the you get to this path, and he goes, "Okay, follow this path, and you'll find a ladder to let you out," or something along those lines. Basically, like, this path is the way out. So you start going down this path, and then you realize as you get to the end of this path that there's no way to get out. It's a dead end. And you turn around, and as you turn around, you see that the gravekeeper is like coming into the path with you, and he now has a knife. So he's like cornered you and is like planning on stabbing you. And when you're actually playing it, it looks ridiculous because the game is just so slow and like just everything in that game just moves at like a slug's pace. But just it's just interesting. I just thought that was a really interesting moment in terms of like this guy's trying to sit here like, "Oh, I'm gonna help you," and then you turn around and he's just like, "No, I'm gonna knife you." get ready. And you pretty much just walk by him, and then you basically are walking around this tomb trying to escape while this guy very slowly walks at you with a knife. And then eventually find a ladder to get out. I think eventually at some point in the story you might kill him, but there's a lot of things that go on. It's a lot of jumping into other people's bodies and like ending up in different environments, because the kind of the main hub is the boat, but as you help these people, you get teleported into the scenes of where they had their tragedy happen, essentially. So yeah, Echo Knight, it's a neat game. I like it a lot. Even if that's not really that's not really much of a spoiler, just kind of like this funny or not funny, but like a really cool moment, I think, in that game. But yeah, check it out and live your life, I guess. I say check it out, but none of you are gonna check it out. That's okay. I everyone tells me to play games, and I'm like, yeah, maybe eventually. It's like, oh, you really should play Persona, and I'm like, maybe. One day, I was gonna play Persona 5, and then now it's just like, oh, I still haven't gotten through Final Fantasy 15. I'm working on Valkyria Revolution. It's taking longer than I thought it would. Xenoblade 2 is coming out next month, and then Tokyo Xanadu is coming out, and then I've had a couple friends recommend me Blue Reflection, and that game looks really nice. And I want to get to it. I just don't know if I'm going to. Says man who plays Venus Vacation in some of his free time. Like the most non-video game of all. That's it for this week. I lied about that long form video being long. Apparently it's actually not that long. It's like 7 minutes long. So whoops. That's what I get for recording a script like 2 months ago and then not doing anything with it. You forget how long it actually is. But I do have an article coming up this week. It was originally going to come out last week, but then I was like, oh, whoops, that's Thanksgiving. So I got an article coming out this week, and then after that, I'm going to have the video going up. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy them. Both of them are Japanese indie titles, so hopefully you learn something new from them. And maybe you'll try them out. Maybe give them a shot. One of them I don't think you're going to get to like even want to give a shot, but I love it. It's a good game. It's not a good game. Next week you'll be okay. The week after that, I don't know. You might look at it and go like, "Oh, this ain't for me." But that's it. That's all. I'm done with this podcast right now. I'm ending it. So sleep well. And end your night tonight well. Good job.